Okay, so I'm gonna tell you something that's gonna sound absolutely insane, but I need you to hear me out, right? 6 months ago, I was trapped on an alien ship for what felt like months, but was only 3 days in real time. And I know, you're probably thinking, here we go, another consciousness projection story that got out of hand. But here's the thing, I was the biggest skeptic about alien abduction stories you'd ever meet. Like, oh my god, I was that person who rolled their eyes at UFO conventions, you know? My name is Rachel Morrison, I'm 34 now, and like, where do I even start with this? I mean, where do you even begin when when your entire world just gets ripped apart in 3 days? Like, oh my god, I used to be so normal, you know? I used to worry about normal things like paying my rent and whether I was eating enough vegetables and this is so stupid. But I used to worry about whether my car was going to pass inspection. And now I'm sitting here with these weird scars on my body talking about being trapped in some kind of alien laboratory, and I can't even process it sometimes, you know? I really can't, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I always do that now. My therapist says it's trauma response, the way I jump around. Let me back up, because, this didn't just happen out of nowhere. There was definitely a build-up, and looking back now, I can see how they were probably watching me for months, maybe even years before they actually took me. And that's the part that really, really freaks me out, you know? Like, how long were they just observing, studying me like some kind of lab rat before they decided to, sorry, I'm doing it again, the jumping around thing. So I grew up in Burlington, Vermont. Really normal childhood, I guess. My dad, Robert Morrison, was an electrician for the city. He's this really practical, no-nonsense kind of guy who believes in things he can see and touch and fix with his hands. Like, oh my god, he's so logical about everything. My mom, Patricia, worked at the Merchants Bank Credit Union downtown for like 20 years. 20 years. Same job, same desk, same little nameplate. She's more emotional than my dad, but still pretty grounded, you know? They're good people. Really, really good people who had no idea what to do with a daughter who saw things that weren't there. I have two younger sisters, Emma and Claire. Emma's about 2 years younger than me, and she was always the perfect child. Like, straight A's, captain of the field hockey team, dated the same boy all through high school. Perfect. She's a nurse now, married with 2 kids, living this picture-perfect life in Montpelier. Sometimes I wonder if she ever thinks about how weird her sister turned out, you know? And Claire, she's 5 years younger. She was always the wild one. Party girl in high school, dropped out of college, traveled around Europe for a few years. She's settled down now though. She manages a yoga studio in Portland, Oregon. But me? I was always the weird one. Always. Like, from the time I was really, really little, I was seeing things. Energy around people, spirits walking around, having dreams that came true. Everyone was crying and sad, but I kept pointing at the corner of the room saying, "Grandma's right there. Why is everyone crying?" And everyone got really quiet, and my mom started crying harder, and I didn't understand why everyone was so upset because Grandma was right there, you know? My earliest memory of it, oh god, this is so embarrassing, but I need to tell you, I was maybe 4 years old, and we were at my grandmother's funeral. She was smiling at me and waving. My parents thought it was cute at first. Like, kids just have active imaginations, right? But it kept happening. I would tell my mom that Mr. Henderson, across the street, had dark shadows around him, and then like 2 weeks later, he'd have a heart attack. I would dream about things, and then they would happen exactly like I dreamed them. Exactly. I would know when people were going to call before the phone rang. And my parents, God bless them, they tried to be supportive. But you know how it is when your kid is talking about seeing dead people and having prophetic dreams. My mom especially had a hard time with it. She was raised strict Catholic, and she kept worrying that I was, I don't know, possessed or something. Like, oh my god, she would make me pray extra hard at night, and she took me to talk to Father Mackenzie at St. Anthony's. He was actually really sweet about it. He told my mom that some people are just more sensitive to spiritual things, and that as long as I was using my abilities to help people and not getting into trouble, it was probably a gift from God. But my dad, he was more practical about it. He would listen to my stories and ask questions, like when I told him I could see Mrs. Patterson. Stog, even though the dog had died the year before, he'd be like, "What does the dog look like? What is it doing?" He never dismissed me, but he never fully believed me either. He was just collecting data, I guess. That's so dad, you know? School was hard because of all this. Really, really hard. Kids thought I was weird. I remember in 3rd grade, I told my friend Jenny that her hamster was going to die soon because I could see this gray mist around its cage. The hamster died 2 days later, and Jenny's mom called my mom and told her I was disturbing and that maybe I shouldn't play with Jenny anymore. That happened a lot. By middle school, I had learned to keep my mouth shut about what I was seeing. I just wanted to fit in, you know? I wanted to be normal so badly. So I stopped talking about the energy fields and the spirits and the dreams. I joined the soccer team, I focused on my grades, I tried to be just like everyone else. But the abilities didn't go away just because I wasn't talking about them. If anything, they got stronger, way stronger. I started having out-of-body experiences almost every night. I didn't know that's what they were called at the time. I just thought everyone could do it, you know. I would lie in bed and then suddenly I'd be floating above my body, looking down at myself sleeping. And then I could travel anywhere I wanted. A and Y were. I would visit my friends' houses and see what they were doing. I would go to places I'd never been before. I would float through the walls of the high school at night and wander around the empty hallways. It was like having the ultimate freedom, you know? No boundaries, no limitations, just pure consciousness traveling wherever I wanted to go. But I still didn't talk about it. I was too scared of being labeled as the weird girl again. So I kept it all to myself and focused on being the perfect student instead. I got really good grades, I was on the honor roll, I got a full scholarship to the University of Vermont. When I got to college, I decided to study psychology because I was fascinated by consciousness and, you know, like what makes people tick. I wanted to understand what was happening to me, but I also wanted to help other people who might be experiencing similar things. I figured if I could understand the brain and how consciousness works, maybe I could figure out how to control my abilities better. During my sophomore year, oh God, this is when everything changed. I took this amazing class called Altered States of Consciousness with this professor, Dr. Amelia Voss. And oh my God, she was incredible. She wasn't one of those professors who just dismissed everything as pseudoscience, you know? She had actually studied with some really legitimate researchers in the field of consciousness studies. She had worked with people like Dr. Monroe at the Monroe Institute. She had studied remote viewing with some of the original military remote viewers from the Stanford Research Institute. And she taught us about astral projection, remote viewing, consciousness expansion techniques. Real techniques, not just the fluffy new age stuff you see online. Like actual scientific approaches to exploring consciousness. And for the first time in my life, I had a name for what I had been experiencing. Astral projection, out-of-body experiences, remote viewing. It wasn't just my weird imagination, it was an actual phenomenon that real researchers were studying. I went to Dr. Voss after class one day and told her about my experiences. I was so nervous, you know? Like, oh my God, I was shaking. I hadn't talked to anyone about this stuff in years. But she listened to everything I told her, and then she said I was what she called a natural projector, someone who could maintain stable consciousness outside their physical body for extended periods. She said it was really rare, and she encouraged me to develop my abilities, so I started practicing seriously, like really, really seriously practicing. Dr. Voss taught me proper techniques for getting into the right brainwave states, for protecting myself during projection, for navigating consciousness in a controlled way. I would spend hours in my dorm room getting into these deep meditative states and then just leaving my body and traveling. I got so good at it, you know? I could visit any location on Earth. I could observe events happening in real time from thousands of miles away. It was like having this incredible superpower. I could project my consciousness to the library and see which books other students were checking out. I could visit my parents' house and watch them having dinner. I could travel to places I'd never been physically and explore them in perfect detail. By my junior year, Dr. Voss recommended me for this research study they were doing at the university. It was funded by some government agency. I never found out exactly which one, but it was definitely military related, and they were studying remote viewing for intelligence applications. Basically, they would give me coordinates, and I would project my consciousness to those locations and report back on what I observed. And I was really, really good at it. Like, scary good. I could describe buildings I'd never seen, tell them what people were wearing, report on conversations I shouldn't have been able to hear. My accuracy rates were consistently in the high 80s, sometimes in the 90s. The researchers were amazed by my abilities. Dr. Valdez, who was running the study, told me I was one of the most gifted remote viewers they'd ever worked with. But here's where it gets interesting, and this is where I think I first attracted their attention. During my senior year, I started having these really strange encounters during my projections. Not with other human consciousness, but with something else. Something definitely not human. At first, I thought they were spirit guides or something benevolent like that. They felt really peaceful, you know? They would communicate with me telepathically, and they seemed genuinely interested in my abilities. They told me I had what they called a bright consciousness signature, and that they were curious about how human consciousness worked. They would ask me questions about Earth, about human emotions, about how we experience time and space. And I was so flattered, you know? I felt chosen, like I was part of some greater cosmic conversation. These beings seemed so wise and advanced, and they were taking time to communicate with little old me. But looking back now, I realized they weren't just making casual conversation. They were studying me, testing my abilities, seeing how far my consciousness could travel, how long I could maintain coherent awareness outside my body. They were gathering data on me, like I was some kind of, sorry, I'm getting emotional. This part is still really hard to talk about. They started showing me things during our encounters, other worlds, other civilizations, technology I couldn't even begin to understand. They would take my consciousness on these incredible journeys through space, showing me star systems and galaxies I never could have imagined. It was like the ultimate education in cosmic consciousness, you know? And they told me I was special, that most humans couldn't project their consciousness beyond Earth's atmosphere, but I could travel to other star systems and maintain coherent awareness. They said they wanted to study me more closely, to understand how my abilities worked. I mean, I was so naive, you know? I was just this college kid who thought she was having these amazing spiritual experiences. I had no idea what they were really planning. No idea that I was being groomed. After graduation, Dr. Voss helped me get a job at this private research institute in Montpelier, the Vermont Institute for Consciousness Studies. It sounds made up, but it's a real place. They do research on remote viewing and consciousness projection for various clients, some government agencies, some private companies, some academic institutions. I worked there for about 3 years, and I was really happy, you know? I had my own little apartment above this bookstore on State Street. It was this tiny one-bedroom place with slanted ceilings and windows that looked out over the mountains. I loved that apartment. God, I miss that apartment. I had this comfortable setup for my projection sessions, a reclining chair by the window, some crystals I had arranged on the windowsill, soft music playing in the background. I felt like I had found my purpose in life, you know? I was using my abilities to help with legitimate research. We were working on projects to help locate missing persons, to gather intelligence on potential terrorist activities, to study consciousness itself. I felt like I was contributing to something important. But I also had this secret hobby that I didn't tell anyone at work about. In my spare time, I would practice projecting my consciousness to really distant locations, not just other places on Earth, but other places. Other planets, other star systems. I know it sounds crazy, but I wanted to see how far I could go, you know? How far could I push the boundaries of human consciousness? And that's when I started encountering them more frequently. These beings that I had met during college, they seemed really excited that I could travel so far astrally. They started showing me even more things, advanced civilizations, incredible technology, concepts about consciousness and reality that blew my mind. But they also started asking me to do things. Like, they would give me specific coordinates to visit during my projections. They would ask me to observe certain events or gather certain information. At first, I thought they were just curious about human affairs, but looking back, I think they were using me as a kind of remote viewing asset. They told me I was part of some kind of cosmic research project, that they were studying human consciousness as part of a larger galactic survey of intelligent species. They made it sound so noble and important, you know? Like I was contributing to the advancement of universal knowledge. I mean, I was so stupid, so fucking stupid. I thought I was this chosen representative of humanity, having these profound spiritual experiences with advanced alien beings. I had no idea I was being groomed, prepared. Like cattle being fattened for slaughter. The encounters became more frequent. Almost every time I projected, they would be there waiting for me. They started teaching me advanced projection techniques, showing me how to travel even further, how to maintain consciousness for longer periods outside my body. They were training me, I realize now, making me stronger, more capable, more useful to them. And then came March 15th, 2024. I remember the date exactly because it was the Ides of March, and I had made this joke to myself about beware the Ides of March. I wish I had taken my own advice, you know? I really, really wish I had listened to myself. It was a Tuesday night. I had gotten home from work around 6, made myself some dinner, leftover Chinese food from the night before, answered some emails. Just a totally normal evening. Around 9 o'clock, I decided to do my usual projection session before bed. I got into my comfortable chair, put on my soft music, and started getting into the meditative state. As soon as I projected out of my body, they were there waiting for me. But something felt different that night. They seemed more urgent than usual, more focused. They told me they wanted to show me something really important, something that would help me understand my true purpose in the universe. Before I could even respond, I didn't even get a chance to say yes or no. I felt this incredible pulling sensation. Not gentle like usual, but really, really forceful. It was like being caught in a riptide, you know? Like being pulled underwater by this massive current you can't resist. I tried to resist, tried to return to my physical body, but I couldn't. The pulling just got stronger and stronger until I was completely disoriented. And then suddenly I was on their ship. But not in my astral form like usual. I was in my physical body. Somehow, some way, they had transported my actual physical body onto their ship. I don't understand how they did it. One moment I was sitting in my chair in my apartment, and the next moment I was standing in this completely alien environment. Oh my god, I can't even describe the terror of that moment. Imagine waking up and suddenly you're not where you're supposed to be. You're somewhere impossible, somewhere that shouldn't exist. The ship was massive, you guys, like the size of a small city. Everything was made of this smooth, pearl-colored material that seemed to glow from within. The corridors were really wide and tall, clearly designed for beings much larger than humans. And it was so quiet, eerily quiet. No mechanical sounds, no humming, nothing. Just this profound, almost oppressive silence that made me feel like I was inside a tomb or something. The beings that greeted me were different from the ones I had been communicating with during my projections. These were physical beings, and they were huge. Maybe 8 feet tall, really thin, with skin that looked almost translucent. You could see veins or something like circulatory systems underneath their skin, like looking at a medical diagram. Their eyes were enormous and completely black. No irises, no pupils, just these deep, endless black pools that seemed to suck all the light out of the room. And when they looked at you, it was like they were looking straight through you. Like they could see every thought you'd ever had, every secret you'd ever kept, every shameful thing you'd ever done. It was terrifying, you know? I had never felt so exposed, so vulnerable in my entire life. I felt like a bug under a microscope. They communicated telepathically, but it wasn't the warm, friendly communication I was used to from my projection encounters. It felt more clinical, more detached, like they were talking to a specimen rather than a person. They told me I was going to participate in some studies that would help them understand human consciousness better. Studies, like I was a lab rat. Now, here's where I need to be really specific about what they did to me, because the physical evidence is still on my body, and I need people to understand that this really happened. This isn't some fantasy or... Sorry, my hands are shaking again. They always shake when I talk about this part. They took me to this room that was completely white, everything white. In the center was this examination table, and they had me lie down on it, so cold it almost burned against my skin. Then they brought out these devices. Simple metal rods, maybe 8 inches long, like thick acupuncture needles, but heavier. Medical-grade steel, I think. Nothing fancy, nothing glowing or crystal-tipped like you see in movies, just tools. Cold metal tools. They inserted these rods into specific points on my body. 1 in each wrist, right through the skin, no anesthetic, nothing, 1 in each ankle, several points along my spine. And the pain, God, the pain was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Not just physical pain, but they were piercing through, I can't even describe it. Through parts of me that shouldn't be there. Through these rods they injected something, some kind of fluid. I could feel it spreading under my skin, warm and thick, not glowing, not magical, just wrong. Like saline solution, but heavier. It left these marks, these injection sites that never healed right. The whole time this was happening, I could feel them in my head. Not just communicating batch, actually inside my consciousness, downloading. No, that's not right. Sorry, I get confused when I try to explain this part. They were copying something, my memories, my abilities, like making photocopies of my brain. The procedure lasted hours, maybe days, I don't know. Time didn't work right there, and I was completely conscious but completely paralyzed. I could see everything, feel everything, but I couldn't move or speak. But here's the physical proof. Those injection sites are still visible. Small, perfectly round scars about the size of a pencil eraser. They're not supposed to be there. Dr. Helena Duarte at the University of Vermont Medical Center took one look at them and immediately ordered every test she could think of. The results were impossible. The tissue around the injection sites had been altered somehow. There were microscopic foreign particles embedded in my skin, titanium fragments, but arranged in patterns that don't occur naturally, like someone had injected metal dust in geometric shapes. Dr. Duarte referred me to Dr. Gideon Strauss, who studies unexplained medical phenomena. He spent hours examining biopsies and told me he'd never seen anything like it. The metal fragments were too small to remove surgically, but they showed up clearly on high-resolution imaging. And here's the weird part. Sometimes, under certain lighting conditions, you can see a faint outline around the scars. Not glowing, nothing supernatural, but like the skin there reflects light differently. Dr. Strauss thinks it might be from the metal particles creating a different refractive index in the tissue. Dr. Valdez, who was running the remote viewing study at the university, told me I was one of the most gifted remote viewers they'd worked with. My accuracy rates were in the high 80s, sometimes 90s. But after what happened, I can barely project at all without having panic attacks. The social fallout was devastating, absolutely devastating. When I told my family what had happened, they were scared but tried to be supportive. My mom cried for hours, you know? She kept asking if she had done something wrong, if there was something she could have done to protect me. She kept saying, "I should have taken you to more doctors when you were little. I should have understood." My dad just went really quiet, like he does when he's trying to process something that doesn't fit into his logical worldview. He asked me technical questions about the ship, about the beings, like he was trying to solve a mechanical problem. That's how he processes things, you know? But I could see in his eyes that he believed me. He was terrified, but he believed me. My sisters had mixed reactions. Emma, being a nurse, wanted to understand the medical aspects. She spent hours researching online, trying to find any cases similar to mine. She even reached out to some of her contacts in the medical field, but of course nobody had ever encountered anything like this before. She was frustrated because she couldn't help me the way she helps her patients. Claire, my younger sister, she was actually the most understanding. Maybe because she's always been more open to unconventional ideas, you know? She flew in from Portland as soon as Emma called her. She told me to be careful about who I shared my story with, that people might try to exploit me or dismiss me as crazy. She was right about that. Really, really right. At work, things got really tense really quickly. I tried to go back after a week. Stupid idea. But I was having severe panic attacks every time I tried to do a projection session. Like, oh my God, I would start to enter that meditative state, and immediately I would feel this overwhelming terror that they were going to take me again. My heart would start racing. I couldn't breathe. I would start shaking uncontrollably. I ended up taking a leave of absence, which raised a lot of questions. The Vermont Institute for Consciousness Studies was supportive on the surface, but I could tell they were concerned about having someone with my situation associated with their research. I heard fragments of conversations, lost it completely, psychotic break, should have seen it coming with people who do that kind of work. The covert funding agencies behind some of our projects quietly distanced themselves. Some of my colleagues avoided me, others whispered when they thought I couldn't hear them. My security clearance was revoked, pending psychological evaluation. I went from being their star remote viewer to being a liability in less than a week. I mean, I get it, you know? If you're running a legitimate consciousness research program, the last thing you want is one of your researchers claiming they were abducted by aliens and experimented on. Noor Patel, who specialized in what she called extraordinary experiences. She had worked with people who claimed to have had UFO encounters, near-death experiences, spiritual emergencies, all kinds of things that mainstream psychology doesn't really know how to process. It doesn't exactly inspire confidence in your scientific credibility. I found a trauma therapist. Dr. Patel didn't dismiss my story, but she also didn't just accept it at face value. She helped me process the trauma regardless of what had actually caused it. We did a lot of EMDR work to help with the flashbacks and panic attacks. She taught me grounding techniques for when I would start to dissociate. It was a lifeline, honestly. I don't know what I would have done without her. Through Dr. Patel, I connected with a support group of people who had similar experiences. We call ourselves the Mount, not very creative, but it fits. There are only 8 of us so far, but each one of us has these unusual scars, these strange medical symptoms, and stories that echo mine in disturbing ways. There's Michael from Seattle, who was taken during a lucid dreaming session. He has marks on his temples that show up under UV light. There's Sarah from Austin, who was abducted during a remote viewing exercise for a government contractor. Her scars are on her spine, and they still hurt 2 years later. There's David from Miami, who disappeared for a week while doing astral projection and came back with burns that look like circuit patterns on his arms. All of us were taken during some kind of consciousness projection activity. All of us have physical evidence that something happened to us, and all of us managed to escape somehow, though none of us are entirely sure how we did it. We meet once a week via video call and once a month in person when we can manage it. Just talking to people who understand, who don't look at you like you're crazy, who have their own impossible scars and their own traumatic memories. It's been incredibly healing. Together, we're trying to understand what's happening to us and why. Dr. Strauss and Dr. Patel are helping us document our cases for a possible medical journal paper. We're hoping that by sharing our experiences in a scientific context, we might be able to help other people who are going through similar things. Through all this, I've developed what I call the resonance anchor, a practice that uses 3 specific sound frequencies to stabilize the bioelectrical field and protect the astral self from being pulled again. The frequencies are 7.8 Hz, which matches the Earth's electromagnetic field, 40 Hz, which is associated with focused consciousness, and 960 Hz, which some people call the frequency of the pineal gland. When I use all 3 together during meditation, it creates this protective barrier around my consciousness that makes it much harder for external forces to interfere with my projections. It's based on techniques I learned from Dr. Voss in college, combined with some things I figured out during my time on that ship. Life after the experience is really, really complex, you know? Every day is a challenge of balancing trauma recovery with hope for the future. Some days I can barely get out of bed because the memories are so overwhelming. Other days I feel like maybe I can use this experience to help people. I'm slowly reclaiming my abilities, but I'm much more careful now. Way more careful. I practice what I call stealth projection techniques, ways to project my consciousness without broadcasting my signature too widely. I never go as far as I used to. I always set up multiple protection barriers, and I never, ever go alone anymore. I always have someone physically present to watch my body and pull me back if something goes wrong. I'm also working on a book about my experience. It's called Marked, A Survivor's Guide to Alien Abduction Recovery. My publisher keeps wanting me to make it more sensational. They want more details about the aliens, more drama, more fear. But that's not what this is about. This is about healing. This is about survival. This is about helping other people who might be going through similar experiences. The hardest part is the isolation, honestly. Most people, when you tell them a story like mine, they either think you're completely delusional, or they get this look in their eyes like you're some kind of fascinating specimen. Very few people can just listen to your experience and accept it as your truth without trying to explain it away or sensationalize it. I've lost friends over this. People I thought would stand by me no matter what, just couldn't handle it. My ex-boyfriend, Jake, broke up with me 2 months after I came back. He said I was different and that he couldn't deal with the weird energy around me. Some of my coworkers from the Institute won't even return my calls. But I've also found new people who understand. The support group, Dr. Patel, Dr. Strauss, some researchers who are genuinely interested in studying these phenomena rather than dismissing them. There's a whole underground network of people dealing with extraordinary experiences, and once you find them, you realize you're not as alone as you thought. The thing is, I don't think I'm the only one this has happened to. I think there are thousands, maybe tens of thousands of humans who have been taken and experimented on by these beings. Most of them probably don't remember it clearly, or they dismiss it as nightmares or delusions. Some of them might be in mental hospitals right now, diagnosed with schizophrenia or dissociative disorders when what they really experienced was alien abduction. And I think it's getting worse. As more humans develop psychic abilities, as more people learn about consciousness projection and remote viewing, more of us are going to attract their attention. They're looking for specific types of consciousness, strong projectors, people with high psychic sensitivity, individuals who can maintain coherent awareness outside their physical bodies. That's why I'm writing the book. That's why I'm sharing my story. Because if you're out there and you have abilities like mine, you need to know the risks. You need to know how to protect yourself. So if you're reading this and you have abilities like mine, please be careful. Set strong protective intentions before you project. Create energy barriers around your consciousness. Learn grounding techniques. Work with experienced teachers who understand the dangers. And if you ever encounter beings who seem overly interested in studying you, trust your instincts and get out of there as fast as you can. I was lucky to escape. Really, really lucky. Not everyone is going to be that fortunate. But the more we share information, the more we support each other, the better our chances of staying safe while still exploring the incredible potential of human consciousness. You know what's weird though? Even after everything I went through, even after being trapped and experimented on for what felt like months, I don't hate them. I mean, I'm terrified of them, but I don't hate them. I understand that they're scientists in their own way. They're trying to understand consciousness just like we are. Their methods are just, well, let's just say their ethics committee could use some serious work. But I also understand now that not all alien contact is benevolent. The New Age community likes to paint all extraterrestrial contact as this beautiful, enlightening experience, but that's not always the case. Sometimes you're just dealing with beings who view you as a research subject rather than an equal consciousness deserving of respect. The universe is vast and complex, and there are all kinds of intelligences out there with all kinds of motivations. Some want to help us evolve. Some are just curious about us, and some see us as resources to be studied and used. You need to be able to tell the difference. I mean, the most important thing I've learned from all this is that consciousness is incredibly resilient. Even after having my awareness torn apart and reassembled, even after being violated at the deepest levels of my being, I'm still here. I'm still me. I'm damaged, sure, but I'm also stronger in ways I never imagined possible. And I'm not alone. There are others like me out there, survivors who managed to escape, people who are learning to reclaim their abilities in their lives. We're building a network, sharing information, developing protection techniques. We're not going to let them take us without a fight. The scars on my body are less visible now than they were 6 months ago. Dr. Strauss thinks the metal fragments are slowly being absorbed by my immune system. I hope he's right. I hope someday they'll fade completely and I can just be normal again. But even if they don't, even if I'm marked for life, I'm going to keep living. I'm going to keep helping people. I'm going to keep exploring consciousness just more carefully than before. Because they didn't break me. They tried, but they didn't succeed. So that's my story. That's how I got trapped on a UFO and lived to tell about it. If you believe me, thank you. If you don't, that's okay too. I know it sounds impossible. But the scars on my body don't lie, the medical tests don't lie, and neither do I. And if you're out there and you've had a similar experience, please reach out. You can find us through Dr. Patel's network or through some of the more credible UFO research organizations. You're not alone and you're not crazy. We need to stick together, because they're still out there and they're still collecting people like us. But we don't have to make it easy for them. We can learn to protect ourselves, we can support each other, and we can keep exploring the incredible potential of human consciousness while staying safe. Like, oh my God, what is my life right now? But you know what? It's MY life, and I'm going to keep living it on my terms, scars and all. I mean, what else can you do,